That drought will officially end on Tuesday. Just to really explain how long awaited it has been. Think who's maybe the most historic player in Major League history? Babe Ruth. He didn't start his career until 6 years after the Cubs won the World Series when he appeared in 5 games with the Boston Red Sox in 1914. Um, if we're looking at the other three major sports leagues, the NFL, NHL, and NBA, three major sport leagues in the USA, none of those leagues had even started yet. The NHL started 9 years later in 1917. The NFL started 12 years later in 1920. And the NBA started 38 years after the Cubs last won the World Series in 1946. Um, who were some of the famous players on that Cubs team? You may have heard about their double play combo. Big baseball fans. Tinkers to Evers to Chance. Tinker, the shortstop. Joe Tinker, the shortstop. Johnny Evers, the second baseman. Frank Chance, the first baseman. They all are currently members of the Hall of Fame. They had three-finger Mordecai Brown as their ace, also a Hall of Famer. That season, he went 29-9 with a 1.47 ERA, 44 games, 31 games started, 27 complete games, and 9 shutouts. This season, they finished 103-58, best record in baseball, the most wins since 1910. The Cubs' most wins since 1910. So they haven't reached that amount of wins in 106 years. It's also their first time reaching 100 wins in 81 years. They last won 100 in 1935. Of course, you often hear, comparing. Sometimes you'll hear your parents say how cheap a gallon of gas was. Back when they first started driving. Well, I can't tell you how much a gallon of gas cost because there really wasn't cars back then. 1908, September 27th, Henry Ford actually produced the first Model T automobile. So of course there wasn't gas stations. The launch price of that automobile was $850. What else? Theodore Roosevelt was the president of the United States, 26th president. He was the president at the time the Cubs won the World Series. Only 43 years prior, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. I mean, to us now, that seems like an eternity ago. Abraham Lincoln being president, and the unfortunate John Wilkes Booth incident. But it was only 43 years prior that had happened when the Cubs had won the World Series. It will be another 39 years until 1947 when Jackie Robinson finally broke the color barrier in baseball. He did that in 1947, 39 years after the Cubs won the World Series. At the time, there was only 46 stars on the United States flag, as there were 4 states that were not yet, part of the United States. New Mexico became one in 1912, as did Arizona. Alaska and Hawaii became states in 1959. So when the Cubs won the World Series, there was only 46 stars on the United States. 1908, it also marked the first time that the ball dropped in Times Square for New Year's Day. That's a very interesting fact. Of course, that's a staple of New Year's now. 1908 was the first time that Mother's Day was observed. May 10th in Andrews Methodist Church in Grafton, West Virginia. Mother's Day was observed in 1908. The first upright vacuum cleaner is invented. Something we all take for granted nowadays. They didn't have back then until the year the Cubs last won the World Series in 1908. Some of the famous movies that were out in 1908 include Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the silent horror motion picture. Also, the earliest known film versions of both of Shakespeare's novels, Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet, both came out in 1908. Um, the Baseball Hall of Fame was founded in 1936, 28 years after the Cubs last won the World Series. The inaugural World Series, Hall of Fame group was Ty Cobb, Walter Johnson, Christy Mathewson, Babe Ruth, and Honus Wagner. Five of the most historic names in baseball history. Last time the Cubs won the World Series, there was 15 amendments in the U.S. Constitution. There is currently 27, one of which was added and since repealed, that being the 18th, which prohibited the manufacturing or sale of alcohol. Of course, that was during Prohibition, which no longer is a part of the United States. So there's just a few of the examples of, how long it has actually been since the Cubs won the World Series. 1908, 108 years and 9 days and counting. A lot has happened since then. We've heard of the curse of the Billy Goat. As a Miami Marlins fan, well, they were the Florida Marlins back then. I definitely remember the 2003 NLCS when Game 6, with the Cubs holding a big lead, we had Steve Bartman in the left field bleachers going after a foul ball that it looked like Moises Alou might have been able to catch. Bartman interfered with it, and the inning went on. Marlins went on to score a bunch more runs. It wasn't just Bartman, though. Their shortstop, the Cubs, Alex Gonzalez, made a crucial error, which allowed the inning to keep going. Marlins had some surprise guys, including Mike Mordecai, get a clutch hit. So definitely a just not an isolated incident regarding Steve Bartman, but, it's one that Cubs fans haven't been able to forgive him. Unfortunately, he's, had to go out in hiding somewhat. That's how much Cubs fans hate him. A lot has gone on with the Cubs not being able to win a World Series. Last year, they looked like they had a solid team, and they got swept by the New York Mets in the NLCS. So, can that streak even end? Of course, Cleveland. Cleveland had that extremely long run of not winning any type of championship between the Cavaliers, Browns, and the Indians. Browns aren't going to help matters. They're still winless on the season at 0-6. But, of course, the Cleveland Cavaliers ended... actually got their first ever NBA championship by defeating the Golden State Warriors. That was the first championship, I believe, in Cleveland since that Indians team last won the World Series in 1948. I could be wrong, as the Browns may have won a championship before that. I'm trying to look that up real quick. Yes, the Browns, won the National Football League Championship in 1964. So it had been 52 years since either any of the three major Cleveland sports teams had won a championship. Of course, the Browns won that NFL championship game. They've yet to win a Super Bowl, though, as that took place before the Super Bowl was in existence. A long drought ended by the Cavaliers. Could the Cleveland Indians continue that positive momentum for the city of Cleveland? They will be without two of their potentially one, as Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar have been out for the entire postseason due to injury. Basically, their second and third best starters, probably behind Corey Kluber. Carrasco definitely will not take part, but they may get Danny Salazar back. He hasn't pitched in over a month, so rust could be a factor. But you know what? They've gotten this far without those two. Of course, Trevor Bauer was bleeding all over the mound last time he was out. Will he be ready? Some questions for the Indians, but like I said, they've made it this far, and they've basically dominated in the playoffs, going 7-1 en route to the World Series, which this is their first World Series appearance, against since 1997 against my favorite team again, the Florida Marlins. That game, ended in heartbreak. Jose Mesa blowing the game in Game 7. Edgar Renteria's base hit, driving in Craig Counsell. That was 19 years ago. The Indians haven't made it since until now. So, a lot riding on this World Series as... Of course, as I mentioned, the two longest droughts in Major League Baseball without winning that World Series. One of them will end. A lot of casual baseball fans are definitely pulling for the Chicago Cubs. Their story is just the story of lore, in their extremely long wait since they have either made or won the World Series. Of course, much longer since they have won it. But of course the whole city of Cleveland still riding that high of the Cavaliers. Could they reach an even higher high, with the Cleveland Indians potentially winning their first World Series since 1948. So definitely should be a fun World Series. Game 1, as I mentioned, John Lester and Corey Kluber both have been phenomenal pitchers over the past, 5 years. Kluber more 3, but both have been outstanding this postseason. John Lester, of course, 2013 World Series MVP. Corey Kluber, 2014 AL Cy Young. So we're starting off with a great pitching matchup in Cleveland, where the first 2 games will take part in. That'll about wrap up episode number 85. Real quickly, I did want to mention this earlier. There was an outstanding college football game last night between Oklahoma and Texas Tech, where we saw a record be broken by Texas Tech's quarterback, Patrick Mahomes II. He tied the the college football record with 734 passing yards, actually the FBS record. He tied that record with Connor Halliday of Washington State, who set the mark in 2014, and his 819 yards of total offense are also a new FBS record. Oklahoma and Texas Tech also shattered the FBS record for combined yards in a game with 1,708 combined. Both teams finished with exactly 854 yards of total offense. The previous record was 1,640 yards by San Jose State and Nevada in 2001. Patrick Mahomes II, outstanding game. Wasn't enough though, as Oklahoma defeated Texas Tech 66-59. But definitely a game for the record books. As a Giants game, it almost reminds me of that game last year between the Giants and Saints. But even that game, wasn't quite as high scoring as Oklahoma Texas Tech. But very similar. It would just seem that either defense was unable to get a stop. Also had a big upset yesterday in college football as Penn State on their whiteout day was able to defeat number 2 Ohio State. Definitely hurting their playoff chances, but you can't quite consider them out yet. Still a lot of college football left to be played. We have to see what other teams around them, like Michigan and Alabama, do. Still have a chance to make that 4-team college playoff. So still a lot riding in college football. NFL Week 7 currently going on with the early game in London. Tied still 10-10 Giants Rams. Minute 7 left in the third quarter. I'm about to sit back, enjoy this fourth quarter until I go to my step grandfather's 90th birthday party. As I mentioned, quite a great feat to reach the age of 90, and he's still very active in his life. Still seems very healthy, and definitely gonna be a great celebration to be a part of. So, episode number 85 is in the books.